In this lake lies a mystery, one that could be sheltering a creature of the past. Originally named after French explorer Samuel de Champlain, the locals living around the area called the creature Champ. Some have speculated it as a living prehistoric aquatic reptile. Few have devoted their lives to the study of these creatures. One such individual is Katy Elizabeth, who currently resides near Lake Champlain.
Has been on the hunt for this lake's hidden treasure for 5 years.
Something that's reptilian, about 15 to 20 feet in length. They basically have brownish blackish skin. When you finally see it for yourself, it pulls at you emotionally. It's basically a dream come true.
Known as Champ, the renowned lake monster has been spotted in these waters hundreds of times over the last couple of centuries. Katy's first sighting changed her forever.
I always thought of the idea of seeing a lake monster or serpent. It was just always kind of like a fantasy thing for me, and to actually see it in real life, it was just totally amazing. I knew that this had to be my life calling.
This is the RRN Cryptozoological Network, broadcasting from the heart of Oregon's Salem's capital. Welcome in my fellow Oregonians watching on CC Media. And if you're listening and watching on social networking, on the social network, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, grateful for your subscriptions, grateful for your comments. I appreciate them. And by the way, just so you know, I do read these comments, and I want you to know that you can feel free to send me emails and you can call me as well. I do my best to answer these messages, so sometimes I tend to get busy, but I want you to know they are being seen. So they may not be seen on the network, but maybe eventually they will be. For instance, I'd like to give a shout out to a couple of people that have sent me recent emails. One was Neil. Neil, you sent me an email about the aircraft or the spaceship that you had seen with your own eyes. This is more in the realm of ufology, which is not my forte, but I do agree with you, and I appreciate your email that you sent. The other is Tim, whose brother, who saw the creature on the Trinity River Monster. This is a fascinating account. Appreciate you, Tim. Thank you for coming forward and sharing some more information about that with me. I appreciate it. Also, Ben Partridge, who's been on the show before, who has a chance to share what he knows about the giant spider phenomena. Ooh, this is an interesting one. I love this one. So Ben, if you're listening, keep up the good work. Keep up with your studies. I'd like to see what you do in the future. Sounds interesting. And lastly, I had a gentleman, I don't know his name. There was no name attached, at least not that I know of. Apologize if I get that wrong. He mentioned something about the Nahatik, which is also known as the Ogopogo of Canada. This is actually my favorite lake monster. He mentioned that it very well could be a large eel of some sort. I would agree. However, not all sightings, but some would suggest that this is something far bigger and far more monstrous. Not monster as far as being hideous, just, we're talking about a sea serpent, a serpent. I guess the people you could ask about that would be Aaron Neely and Fletcher Cox back in the 70s when Aaron Neely was water skiing, bumped right into the creature, and then had the horrible experience of coming face to face with it. It stunned her to this very day. Anyway, I appreciate the comments. Thank you so much. There is an email I'd like to read real fast if we have time before our guest appears. And this is off topic, but I feel it's necessary to answer it the best I can before providing you with a way to go and check it out for yourself. This is an email that I got from Randy of Grants Pass, Oregon. Randy, thank you so much for the email. He says, what do you think of once saved, always saved? Okay. This is a philosophical debate that sometimes tends to divide people. And I would say, usually on some circumstance, I say, don't let this divide you. However, there's a problem here. This could lead someone to stumble. What do I personally think of if you're saved, you're always saved? Well, the Bible says that once you confess your sins and choose Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you are a new creation, being born again. Can you be unborn? No. The people who probably make this case against saying you are not saved to the end unless you believe to the end, probably haven't read Proverbs or Corinthians. Don't just read a small passage, read the whole chapter, guys. That'll give you full details of what and why I say that you are still saved. Let me make something very clear, though, as fast as I can. If you could lose your salvation, I guess this would make God a liar, then, right? Have you ever heard of the phrase, nothing earned is nothing gained? Well, in this case, nothing meant is nothing gained. So if you didn't mean it when you spoke it from your heart and out your mouth, then it's not set in stone. Now, I kind of have a hard time believing that, but believe it or not, some people don't realize or remember what they're doing when they speak things, okay? Your words have power. You know, there's a good analogy of that when we as sinners tend to, he's got us by the hand, okay? He's got us. But we tend to let go because we're sinners. And what he does is he holds on tight. So he never lets you go. This does not mean it's a license to sin, okay? There are penance for your actions, for your behavior. I'll give you a fine example of this. If you become Christian and later become a murderer and you're on death row, that's your penance, justice. You will have to pay for what you've done. But that doesn't mean you're going to hell. Oh, no. That means you're going to pay for the price. The wages of sin is death. Death leads to, sin leads to destruction. Okay? So think about this. Now, I know this is not a popular thing to discuss, because a lot of people are really angry with it. If it was popular, I wouldn't be for it. Today, we're supposed to be John the Baptist, modern day. We're supposed to set people straight. Whether they like it or not, this is the way it's supposed to be. But it really is easy to be saved. You put your trust in him, and he's mighty to save. He's not going to let go. But if you can't behave, you're out of here. And I've seen it happen because I have friends who are Bloods, friends who are Crips, and they were gone too soon. If that wasn't enough for you, check out the link that I'm going to attach. It's by Matt Powell. It goes through the full thing to give you a better understanding. Okay, remember though, it's not a license to sin. You will be held accountable for the things you do. But it doesn't mean you're going to suffer eternal damnation. On the cross, he said, it is finished. And so it is. Hope that helps to clarify. Speaking of lake monsters from our last email from the gentleman with the Ogopogo, it's time to finally get into that. I'm ready for lake monsters. Our first guest to start off this new year is from Lake Champlain. And I think she currently lives there at this time. She's done a lot of research. I've heard about her, I want to say going back to the early 2000s. Perhaps her research began after 2010 or so. But she's on the network today, and I'm excited to have her. This is Katy Elizabeth. Katy, okay. Welcome to the RRN Cryptozoological Network. It is a pleasure to have you here. I'm excited to hear about your research and what you're doing at Lake Champlain. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an honor.
Here's what I want to do first. What I want to start with is this. I know a little bit about your background. I know that you've probably been researching Lake Champlain for about 8 or 10 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say almost 10 years now, field research wise, and I've been studying the phenomenon since I was 7 years old as an armchair researcher.
Well, I think we've all been there at some point, haven't we?
Yes.
I think a common ground for a common formality that you and I share is this. We both saw Champ on Unsolved Mysteries for the
Yes,
first time. That's what did it.
that was it. That was the hook, line, and sinker, so to speak.
Yeah, same here too. When I saw that image from Sandra Mancy in 1977, they showed on on that airing, I was mesmerized. And it made me wonder if anyone's ever done any forensic heat source of some kind on that image. I thought someone had done it in the past, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. The whole idea, the whole concept of a living dinosaur, so to speak, in Lake Champlain is huge. And you being there in person and having the time to actually spend so much time out there, because I don't think that you originally lived right there on the lake. I think you were quite the distance away from it, weren't you?
I was. I grew up in the state of Rhode Island, the Ocean State. So that's about 4.5, 5 hours from my home here in Ferrisburg, Vermont on Lake Champlain. So it's a little bit of a drive, a little bit of a drive.
Yeah, back and forth. That's got to be tough. I mean, for me, most of the things I've been doing has been in Washington State, but totally different cryptic or creature, you could say, because I like the flying variation that have been around, and
Yeah.
they've been seen all over the states. So this is completely different, though. So this is an aquatic creature, and then what I want to find out that's very, very important. I don't know. I better stop. I better stop in my tracks. I'm going too far ahead.
I do it
So
all the time, so don't feel bad.
I know because I'm ready to start dissecting if this is if my assumptions are correct when it comes to this creature, but I got to hold back for a moment. And let's just begin with what you have found on Lake Champlain. Let's go into your research from the first time you started. And then I also believe that you have seen him yourself, or one of them at least.
Yes, I have. Okay, do you want me to start from when I was little to now, or what do you think?
Let's go ahead and go into your research on the lake.
Okay. Okay, so it was 2012. I'll skip forward. And I decided I was watching, and it wasn't Unsolved Mysteries this time. It was, I think it was Monsters of the Deep, National Geographic. And I had studied Champ, Ogopogo, Nessie, other lake monsters around the world ever since I saw the Sandra Mancy photo. And I never forgot about it. I was always continuing like the couch potato research up until into my teens. And finally, I was part of a paranormal investigation group at one point. And during that, instead of doing the ghost hunting stuff, I said, I really want to go up to the lake. I've been wanting to do this my whole life. My mom never kept her end of the bargain when I saw the Mancy photo on Unsolved Mysteries. She's like, oh, I'll take you up to the lake. And she never did. So it wasn't until 2012 when I finally took a camping trip up here. Never had any anticipation of seeing anything. I just wanted, there was like a magnet drawing me to the lake. So when I got here, I remember getting out of the car and seeing the mountains, the Adirondacks, and this uncontrollable emotion of happiness. Like I started crying. It was the weirdest thing. I felt like I was home finally. I felt like I was separated from this area for a long time and I was finally back.
Yeah.
So it was just this magnetism of the mountains and of seeing the lake. So we were camping out and looking out. This was at Button Bay State Park. And I had chose that location because most people usually choose Burlington waterfront when they come up here because that's where all the nightlife is and all the shops. And I picked Button Bay because I had seen a lot of things on the internet about sightings in Button Bay. And my former research partner, Dennis Hall, had a lot of different sightings in Button Bay and collected a lot from that area as well. So I said, well, it's really nice because it's a rural area and I'm a rural country kind of person. I don't really like the city very much. So I said, well, this is perfect. So we were sitting at our campsite and looking out. It was around 11:30 in the morning and it was very, very calm, like glass. And I remember seeing some turbulence in the water about halfway out into Button Bay towards an island called Rock Island. And I didn't think anything by it because I grew up on the water. I've seen whales, dolphins, schools of fish rising to the surface, logs, otters, you name it. I've seen it all. So I'm looking out and I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird that it was just like a swirly pattern going on. And then this dark colored hump rose to the surface of the water. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's probably an otter, a muskrat, something like that. And then it started to pick up speed and do this vertical undulation. And I'm like, I've never seen that before. And if I never thought champ, I didn't think champ at the time, but I knew it was something totally different. And I'm like, could that be champ? It was weird. So when I looked in the background, I saw there was a sailboat moored and it had to be at least 20 feet in length. And this was, I would say, according to that sailboat for scale, it was about 15 feet in length. So it started like crawling along in this really rapid, really weird, almost like it was like convulsing. It was just like a electric pulse look to it at the same time, like kind of shuddering at the same time. And I said, oh my God, I'm just sitting there in awe. And I'm like, oh my God, my camera. I didn't have it on me because I didn't think I was going to see anything. So I ran back to my car and I'm like, I'm like screaming and going to grab my camera. And when I got back to the spot, it was gone. And I was so mad. I'm like, I still didn't believe it was champ at that time because I didn't see the head and neck out of the water, the romantic image that you have of the Loch Ness Monster or of any lake monster. So I was really, really frustrated, but I was really fortunate in 2014 to capture a video in the same exact spot around the same time, going in the same direction. So that was really good. I mean, I was just so amazed that I happened to have my camera at hand at the time, which I learned my lesson. Although I didn't have a tripod, and you have to have a tripod. So when I do show the video clip, you'll see it's a little wobbly. I did hand the camera to my partner. I got a better steady hand than he did, but we did get it on camera. So that was my like saving grace, because I'm like, people are gonna think I'm absolutely insane that I didn't get on camera. Oh, it's when you get caught in that moment, there's no way to, how do I put it? There's no way to snap out of it sometimes. I mean, now I'm so used to like having that happen. Like I've gotten the videos that now I'm just like, okay, I'm on it. But then comes technical difficulties too. I've had my camera zoom in, zoom out for no reason. It's really strange. So, I mean, I film ducks all the time. I film boats, and I do that to practice my reaction time. So what I'll do is I'll sit on the lake, I'll see a boat going by really fast, and I'll go, oh, okay, I'm going to do this as quick as I can. Power on, get it on, zoom in as quick as I can, focus. And I do that all the time. I do it with ducks. I practice because you need to have a really fast reaction time, because these animals do not come up for a very long time most of the time. Some sightings, they've been like 5-minute sightings, which is like really rare, but you have to have a really good reaction time.
You mentioned something that caught my interest as well as the boat that was in the area and the creature was surfacing. So it's almost as if these creatures do not like the sounds of these boats and they try to avoid them. Am I correct?
Absolutely. With my research, I've kind of pinpointed down that these animals have extremely, extremely sensitive hearing, and thus the echolocation, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Any animals that echolocate have high sensitivity to sounds, to different frequencies, especially high frequency. So anything with boat motors, sonar, they hate sonar. I mean, over at Loch Ness, they did Operation Deep Scan, and they got 2 targets on their sonar, and then all of a sudden they were gone. But the funny thing is, with Operation Deep Scan, they covered the whole center of Loch Ness, but all they were doing is really pushing the animals into the small bays. They didn't check out the small bays. They should have had other boats in those bays cruising around, because you're going to be pushing them into those areas. So that's something that they should have tried. So if I ever get $1 million, maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, That's what it comes down to is funding for all these projects. And as soon as you can't mention monster, because as soon as you do, they're going to turn you down. You got to mention like, oh, use some fancy words maybe to get them
Yeah.
to get interested. But as soon as you mention lake monster or something like that, they're probably going to pass on it.
I
I
hate
think
using the word monster. I always say animal, just unknown animal.
Mesozoic maybe. Um, I know. See, it's really good to have researchers who are devoted to this particular creature, lake dwellers. Most people in cryptozoological fields are interested in Sasquatch. I mean, there are thousands of people who hunt or go looking for the Sasquatch. That's fine. It's just that for you and me, they don't realize that there's something else out there too that is just waiting to be seen. It's only a matter of time, especially with smartphones and the new technology we have. We
Yes.
need more people devoted to these other things as well, because heaven forbid, I mean, there are so many Sasquatch hunters out there. It's just crazy. So it's good to have a person in this field out there at the lake looking for these creatures. Very, very important. So what color was the animal that you saw when it surfaced?
It was like a blackish brown color.
Okay.
And that totally fits in with the eyewitness reports that I've gathered, as well as the video I captured in 2014. I actually have a video clip on here. You think it would be safe enough to share it with this technical thing that we had going on?
Yeah, I know. We got everything perfect right now. I want to make sure I can enable you. Yeah, I think you should be able to go. Let's see what
Okay.
happens.
Okay. So let's see here. This was a video that we captured in 2014. Let me see if I can. Okay, so I have a clip from 2014 of that sighting where I saw a champ animal cross Button Bay. It was exactly like my sighting in 2012, which really impressed me because that means to me that these animals are definitely habitual. So they have a certain feeding pattern. It's like going out to a field to watch deer. If you go out to that field and you see them in that spot, say it's 6:15 p.m., and you go out to that spot, it may not be every day, but you keep going out to that spot, you're going to see the same type of behavior. And I've seen that in the animal kingdom quite often. And that's definitely a trait that Champ does have. I've noticed quite a few sightings that correlate in the same behavior at the same times. So timing is really important when you're out doing the field research, because like say if you have a sighting at like 1:30 in the afternoon, I always mark down my times and I mark down my locations. So when I'm at Button Bay, if I had a certain sighting in a certain spot at a certain time, I'm always looking at that time. I try to stick to a very strict schedule of going to that location at that same time every day.
I see. So they have a nice pattern there, huh?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And what's really amazing is even with, it's funny because there's been sightings in the morning. I've never had luck in the morning, like early in the morning, because I would get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I usually do anyway because I have horses here. So I get up early on the farm, but I go out and it's like 4 in the morning, and I really don't do it as much anymore because I haven't had any luck in the Button Bay area that early. Down the street from my home is Kingsland Bay. And I started to sit down there for a change because unfortunately at Button Bay where I was sitting, all of the trees are getting extremely tall and you can't really see much anymore. So I've changed locations. And I think it was a good move because, let's try something different, because you just never know. I mean, I'm just so used to Button Bay where I've had a lot of luck. But I think it was a good move because I mean I might get even more lucky and get a head and neck video right down the street from my house. So
Yeah.
so now I'm trying to figure out like the pattern with the sighting times there in this certain location down the street. So it's always a learning curve because Lake Champlain's 120 miles long. So there's a lot of places to explore, that's for sure.
120 miles. Is it true that's 400 feet deep?
Yes. And
Okay.
there's different there's different spots, I believe, that go deeper. There was one time I was with a Japanese crew. We were out doing a show for them in Japan, and we were in one spot and it got down to 420 feet on the sonar. So they just say roughly 400, but I believe that there's caves out there and tunnels, because I've had a couple of friends that are scuba divers that have been in these caves, and the University of Vermont and Middlebury College, they're like, oh, there's no caves in the lake. Well, sonar doesn't penetrate caves.
Right.
Sonar beams can only go so far. So it can hit like an opening and it may show like a dark spot or whatever, but that's it. It's not going to tell you anything.
Clarify that. That's important, because so many people, they jump to conclusions without actually being there to look for themselves. Is the water really dark like Loch Ness?
It's not as dark as Loch Ness. The reason why Loch Ness is so dark is because of the high peat content. Here on the lake, the problem that we have going on now is that we have blue-green algae. And the reason why we have the blue-green algae, unfortunately, is we have millions of gallons of raw sewage getting into our lake every year. So the raw sewage is feeding these blue-green algae blooms. So the water is like very, very green in the summer. The heat contributes to that. So when it's a really hot summer, which is when these animals are most active, the water is like really green. It kind of depends on the location though. Certain areas are more green than others, but it's not clear like it should be. And it's very sad. I hate how the problem is not being addressed by our society, our government. It just seems like they don't care. And it's very unfortunate to me, because I mean, this lake is amazing and it's a huge tourist attraction as well. So it's like, you think nobody wants to swim in a lake where there's sewage. I mean, come on. It's just common sense.
Well, that's interesting to me, Katie, because they passed legislation to protect this creature, HR 19 in 1982, is that? I want to say?
Yes.
Give or take.
Yes. And also,
I actually the legislation about that one. I spent about 11 years in politics as it is, and I'm glad I'm out. But still, I reached out. They wouldn't even supply me with that bill. I was surprised.
Well,
I didn't tell them.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because in New York State, what had happened was in Port Henry, New York, which is called the home of Champ, there was a law in that whole area up to Westport, New York, to protect Champ that was passed in 1985 by Joseph Zarzinski, a former Champ researcher. So going over to Port Henry all the time, because my research partners reside there, I had heard about the town of Port Henry dissolving their laws or something, and they were going to, any law that was created was going to be dissolved. It was going to be gone, because they were basically a hamlet of Mariah, New York. So any of the laws that were present at the time were totally defunct after that point. So I had remembered that Joe Zarzinski had written a law to protect Champ, right? I mean, a specific one other than the New York State law in that area. And I was like, oh God, what's going to happen to the law now? So I said to myself, I'm going to approach the town supervisor and see if I can get an appointment to go over there and see if I can write a new law and have that passed. And the other reason why I wanted to write a new law was the law that Joseph Zarzinski wrote. It said the Lake Champlain serpent. It referred to one. It didn't say anything about multiple. There is indeed a population here. Scientifically, you cannot just have one that's going to survive a millennia. So, so I went over there and I'm thinking to myself, the town supervisor is going to think I'm a total crackpot. And he didn't. He was like, you know what? My family members have seen Champ. I even had a strange experience when I was 14 years old. So
that's what it takes.
Yeah, and I showed him like the video, and at the time I didn't have the sonar yet, but the echolocation, and he was just like, okay, I'm going to present this at the next meeting and we'll keep our fingers crossed. So I get a phone call from somebody, and I didn't even know, because they actually canceled it for the next meeting. Well, they said they were going to, and then they ended up bringing it up. and they passed it. So I was so excited that I actually got the privilege to write a New York state law to protect Champ.
That's
So that
fantastic. Good
yeah.
for you. And I'm glad that somebody shared the same experience. That's what it takes.
Definitely.
And it's a rare thing to see happen.
Yeah,
It
definitely.
really is.
I mean, like I felt I was so scared. Like, I mean, I remember going over there and I'm like shaking. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't think this is gonna happen. And I was
Never
just
know unless you try. It's one person
exactly.
makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Good for you.
Thank
Well, actually,
you.
my correction was April 30th, 1986 is when they passed HR 19. But I think what
Well,
you did was.
and the other thing too that I want to bring up is who is really like if someone's out there and they actually see something and they have a gun with them,
Yeah.
who's going to follow a law from that time? I mean, an old law. These laws need to be updated to present day. I would say every 5 to 10 years, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes there's verbiage that needs to be taken out, and then you have to revise it. And sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it's immediate. It just depends on how on board everybody else is.
Yeah.
When you saw, the movement of Champ, they call him Champion. It's Champlain, just for the audience knows. Have you observed, do they move serpentine or do they move like this? Is it like this or is it?
They can
like
actually
this?
do both, which is really interesting. Okay. And I didn't really know about this until I was watching a video that my former research partner, Dennis Hall, had gotten. Typically, the vertical undulation is the most common. But I did see in one of his videos, the animal started moving in the side-to-side movement instead of the vertical movement. So I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. They seem to have a very advanced type of vertebrae because they can actually curl their neck around in a loop, very much like a snake. So I believe if you happen to come across, which I hope happens one day, a skeleton of a champ animal on the beach, it would have very elongated side ribs, which would help it be able to bend in that sort of manner. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting because normally when you have vertical undulation, that's a thing that's present in cetaceans or mammals, meaning whales or dolphins. And I work with whales and dolphins. I've done a lot of echolocation type of biosonar research, bioacoustics down in Florida, and I've done some stuff with manatees. And I try to do, I don't have a college degree yet, but I'm working on getting my degree in marine biology and also marine bioacoustics. So that's kind of, I'm doing all of the field research to help with the college degree. And it helps with my champ research as well. I believe the more boots on the ground work that you do and you get here is more important than what's on paper. Anybody can sit there and read a book, but to actually go out there and experience these things in person, it's priceless.
Yeah, and this is why I tell a lot of people I'm not a big fan of festivals because I don't mind maybe attending one, but I don't have a book to sell. Yeah. I want to be out there. This is why I spend most of my time in the climates when it's cold, when it's hot, like 110 degrees. That was fun. I always tell everybody, get out there. That's where the real adventure is. And that's where you're going to possibly see something. You never know unless you're out in the elements. Absolutely. Like I said, though, festivals and places you can go to talk to other fellow believers is great. But eventually you're going to have to take that stand and actually go to the actual location and find out for yourself. Now brings me to this question. Now, I truly feel that there are multiple species potentially in this lake. The first one that comes to mind, because when I hear about about the accounts of this thing walking on land, makes me think of a Tanystropheus.
Yes.
If you're familiar with that one.
Yes.
Now that is, I don't know exactly the exact date or when they pinpointed its existence.
Triassic.
Talking long tail.
Yeah, it was a Triassic period the Tanystropheus came from.
Yeah. So we have a very long neck, body. It's kind of sauropod-like, but long tail, which actually I think they can actually grow that back. Some reptiles can
Yes,
grow
they
their tail.
can.
Yeah, but it would actually explain why they can walk on land too. And I remember Dennis Hall. Now, when I hear the name Dennis Hall, I remember some of the photos I've seen of what he had seen, or supposedly he's received a lot of flack for these images that some people have said he's concocted himself in order to further this research. I don't know that. I don't know that. But from what I remember of Dennis, he seemed like a very nice man, someone who was legit in his research, was trying to find the truth, just like yourself. And I think that's when I came across you too, but that was back in the day, years ago.
Yeah.
And he suggested what he saw was at night. I think he observed one, and he said it is not a plesiosaur. What I saw resembled more of a Tanystropheus, if I'm saying that correctly. So that's what made me curious. I'm like, maybe that's it. Maybe that's this creature, or there's multiple kinds in this lake. I don't know, but that's my theory. What's your take on this?
Well, yeah, I worked with Dennis for probably about 5.5 years, and we were a couple for a while, not anymore. But no matter, like, I mean, we've had our little differences and stuff, but no matter what, I will always stand by his research. He's got some really amazing videos. I mean, he has a box in his house that he's never showed. I've never even seen the videos, and he's like, I don't even really know what's in this box. Like, there was like tons of videos that he had captured and just kind of threw them in the corner. It's like when you video ducks, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'd love to go over there and get those videos, because I mean, and transcribe them to DVD. But his theory about Champ, I totally agree with. I'm not saying that they're a Tanystropheus, so that's what we'd have like little spats about, like, it's a tanny. I'm like, well, just because it looks like a Tanystropheus, it does not necessarily mean, because evolutionary adaptation is at play all the time. You know, they could have started out with flippers and then had webbed feet, and then their neck got longer. And does that mean they're a Tanystropheus? Just because they have a long neck, does that mean they're a plesiosaur? No. I mean, we don't know. But I do agree with him on that, where this is probably the closest animal in our known fossil record that fits the description. And yeah, totally with the research that he's done and stuff, I actually owe it to him, because he told me so much about the habitual patterns, and sometimes you'll see him at the same time, and like he introduced me to different areas on the lake that I never really knew about. And you know, some of the videos that he's gotten, people are like, oh, those are logs or whatever. And I'll tell you what, I was sitting with him at Button Bay. This was actually after I got the 2014 video. And it really makes me mad to like talk about it though, because my camera did not want to focus that day. And no one's ever going to believe me, and I really don't care. But this is the God honest truth. So I'm sitting there with him, and we're looking out at the lake towards the New York side. And we're looking through this spotting scope that he had since like 1980. What the heck? You need new equipment. So we're looking through it, and he's like, hey, there's two champs across the lake. Looking here. I'm like, get out of town. So I'm looking through it, and I see just these two wakes. And I'm like, it's two boat wakes. And I'm making fun of him. I'm like, you're absolutely crazy. You're nuts, you know? And he's like, I'm telling you, it's two champs. I'm like, no. So then he would look back again. So I did. And when I did, I could see two humps, one kind of diagonally across from each other. So you got one here and you got one here. So one was more in towards where we were than this one. And when that happened, the one in the front, this head and neck came up. I'll tell you what, I freaking bawled my eyes out. I'm trying to focus my camera. Like I said, there's instances where your camera will not focus. Like I said, you can film ducks, you can film boats. It's fine. That makes me wonder about, maybe there's something kind of weird going on. I don't think they're paranormal, but I have a theory, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But so the head and neck came up, and I was just like froze. I'm like, what the hell? So I'm trying to zoom in the camera, and I couldn't get it to focus. I should have still taken the video. I should have still taken it, even if it was blurry, but it was so freaking far away. It was like, I would say it's probably 5 miles from where I was sitting. And my camera at the time, I have a 65 zoom now, which is good. So like, and of course I haven't had that happen, but I'm hoping it will. But now that I got a good camera. So when the head net came up, I was like, holy beep. And the chin went up in the air and it had something in its mouth. And then it kind of tossed its chin up more. And you could see like, I couldn't make out like the details, the eyes, of course, because they're like blackish brown. That's their color. But I could make out, I saw like the throat do this, like it was swallowed like a gullet. When you see like a Komodo dragon eat something, or even a blue heron bird, like you'll see them, they'll do this and you'll see the gullet start to move. So I saw that and I was like, what the hell? And then it turned its head and neck around in a loop. It was the craziest thing. And it was slow motion. It was slow motion, just like watching a snake just, it was the weirdest thing. And it was just so, it was graceful. It was so graceful. And it like just went down in the water, and then they both of the humps kind of went off a little bit and they were gone. And I looked at him and I said, you have got to be bleeping kidding me. And he's like, I told you. And he's laughing at me. And I'm like, it's not funny. I'm like, in SOB, I didn't get it on camera. I mean, it was just the craziest thing. But
she's an unbeliever.
I don't care if nobody believes me, but I'll tell you what, it made an impact on what I do so much, because I knew that the videos that I were getting of just the humps going across the water were not just a log, were not just a wave. It totally confirmed the head and neck sightings that people have been having for hundreds of years.
Being able to curl like that in a loop, that's crazy. I'm sorry, that's not a turtle.
No. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, and a friend of mine, I haven't spoken to him in a while, but Chuck Pogan, he's got this theory that these animals are a long-necked giant turtle, which, you know, I have to say that theory is probably the best other than the plesiosaur. So I kind of like that theory better. It's more feasible. A shellless turtle. He said that he saw the Baudet footage that was taken in 2005, and Dennis actually did get to see that. He went to his house at the time. That was before all the, I want like $10,000 for the video clip and all that. So my friend Chuck said that he had seen the video. I don't know if it's true, but he said that they had a carpus, like, you know, a shell. And I'm like, it's so weird, because like on my sonar image that I got back in 2019, you don't see a type of shell on these animals. You don't see that. And I mean, you think if there's an animal out there, a species of animals out there with a shell, you would think you'd find one somewhere at least. I mean, that's something that's not going to just rot away unless they're just sinking to the bottom. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, personally, I'm not buying the turtle thing at all. I just don't think that it is the case. I do think it's the other ones, though. Plesiosaur, I don't think so. I would be more open to that one with Loch Ness because of the sightings on land. Yeah. I do think that plesiosaurs can walk on land, regardless of what paleontologists have been saying. I think they can't stay a long amount of time on land, but they can come on land.
Yeah.
I would think they can even lay eggs on land.
Yeah, because I mean, there are a lot of land sightings here, not a ton. But in the marsh systems, I live in Ferrisburg, Vermont, so I'm about 30 minutes south of Burlington. And in my new book, Water Horse of Lake Champlain, The Search, which I'll be sending you shortly, there's a lot of sightings that occur down the street from my house. And I actually know the landowner, good friends with him. He's got over 300 acres of marshland. And there's been a ton of sightings in this marsh, particularly at nighttime. People have seen Tapetum lucidum, eye shine, in the marsh about 7 to 8 feet off of the ground. So there's been prints found, tracks through that marsh, and nothing recent, because I do research down there. I have permission to go down there, and I never tell anybody the location, because they're kind of a redneck family and they'll shoot somebody. So
That's what we usually worry about too. This is why we don't disclose certain things, because I'd be afraid that someone's going to kill this creature before we even get a chance to maybe tag it or something like that. But you mentioned tracks. Does that mean someone took a cast?
Nobody took a cast, which is a shame. I'm what the heck were you thinking? And my friend, he's actually a hunter, so he tracks animals all the time. And I'm like, damn, you should have taken track. He's like, oh, no, I should have taken. I'm like, all you have to do is go to the hardware store and get your plaster of Paris and just throw it on there. But people just don't. He's like, I don't know. I just didn't even think of it. I'm like, what the heck?
Right,
but certain people have the investigator type of DNA, so to speak. We have to. We're prepared. We're prepared.
So much more thought involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're actually investigating. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like the whole area where I live, a lot of it is swamp. Matter of fact, right behind my house, there's a swamp as well. And I haven't done anything back there yet because there's like a train track and it's really steep. So like I'm going to check it out back there this summer because you never know. They might go back there too. I don't know. Wouldn't that be amazing that they're in my own backyard? You never know.
That would be incredible. I mean, some people have told me things kind of like that, where they felt that there's certain creatures that are inhabiting their area that would come out at certain times of the year. Do you suppose, is it mostly the summertime that these creatures like, or are they more on the winter side?
Absolutely the warmer the better. I've noticed with my studies across the globe with various lake monsters, even Nessie, most of the sightings here on Lake Champlain occur from April, when the water reaches 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is when the ectothermic animals start to come out. So you have the turtles and the frogs. So you got reptile and amphibian. And once that starts happening, then the sightings start coming in. And then all the way to October. And then once October hits, it starts getting really cold. The lake starts to turn. Everything starts to change. And I think at that point, they are feeding a lot. September seems to be a really great feeding area, feeding time, because where I live down the street is Otter Creek. The mouth of Otter Creek, the mouth of any rivers, I've noticed this with a lot of reports, even like at Loch Ness or Lake Memphremagog, which is about 2 hours from here. There's been a lot of reports of the same. I believe that they're the same species as Champ. So the mouths of the rivers, they're great feeding spots for these animals. The fish are coming out. There's all kinds of activity going on, and it just seems in the fall time, that's when most of the sightings happen near the mouths of these rivers and going into the swamps as well. And I think the reason for that, I believe these animals are ectothermic. So they need the sun to sustain their inner core temperature. That's why the land sightings, sunbathing, and that sort of thing happen. So they go to these rivers and, the mouths of the rivers and also the swamps to basically fill up for the winter time. And then they go into a torpor-like state, like the turtles and the frogs. So they might be not completely torpor. I mean, like a lot of people think that snapping turtles totally go into the mud and they're eating all winter. But there's been studies where they've actually marked different places on the ice where they see a snapping turtle, and then like they'll be like 20 feet away like an hour later. So they can still move, but they're in a very, very dormant like state. And their heart rate goes down to like less than 1 beat per minute. And they're not eating at that time either. Okay. And the biggest thing with a lot of people ask me is like, if there's a population of 15 to 25 feet long creatures in Lake Champlain, wouldn't that have an effect on the food web? Mm-hmm. Well, if they've been here for a millennia, if they've been here since, prehistoric times, like the bowfin, the gar, the sturgeon, those fish are here in Lake Champlain till present day, and they've been around for 100 million years. Nature has a way. They're built into that food web, first of all.
I don't really think they can adapt to their environments.
Yeah. And then second of all, if they're not eating all wintertime, like, the fish are replenishing. That's another thing. And if we're dealing with an ectothermic species, there are reptiles and amphibians that can go a year to a year and a half without having one meal to survive. And,
That's true.
you're dealing with ancient species are not here just by fault. They're here because they're extremely resilient. They've gone through so many changes. It's not like humans. Like, we've only been here so long. These animals have been here for thousands and millions of years. So it's like they have a way, nature has a way, and they're still here for a reason because they have that ability to adapt and to survive ultimately.
So I think we have just a little bit of time to talk. One of the things I wanted to look into was the echolocation, because it
Okay.
seems to be the most useful tool when it comes to finding Champ. Is that correct? Okay.
Absolutely. In 2009, Elizabeth von Muggenthaler, blah, 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 I didn't get her name right. I worked with her for a little bit. Unfortunately, she's just stopped doing her, bioacoustics work on the lake, which was a shame. And back in 2009, she captured echolocation for the first time here in the lake. One spot was Button Bay, which is interesting, and the other spot was Thompson's Point, which is about, I would say, probably about 6 miles north of Button Bay, and then over at Hunter Bay, which is probably about 7 or 8 miles from that area as well. So she captured it 3 times. She had told me that she captured like a whole bunch of different recordings, and I hung out with her and I was at her house, but she never like let me listen to any of the other ones. So I don't know if she was making it up or what. But anyway, with her echolocation, it was really interesting because in 2014, I was out on the lake with Dennis Hall, and we were at a place called Scotch Bonnet, and it's over near Basin Harbor. And we were out there, and it was about no, wait a minute. It was 8:10 p.m. Now I remember. I get all my dates and my times mixed up because I've had so much happen in the last 10 years. It's like you get the dates and the times, and then sometimes you're like, oh, wait a minute. Everything gets switched. So we were out in that location because in 1985, he had captured video of a champ animal with its head and neck kind of swinging around. And at the time, it was on Sightings. Remember the old show Sightings?
I remember that show.
Yeah, they televised it on there. And it was like back in the 80s, and technology, the cameras were crap. So it's like you're not gonna get the best video in the world.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
so he got that video and he's like, all right, let's go out to that spot. So we're sitting there and I hear this noise. I'm like, what the heck is that? And I'm thinking, because we had a bimini top on the boat and there's straps. So there was a slight breeze. So I said, maybe it's the straps in the wind. Because like the hydrophone will pick up you can just cough on the boat and sometimes you can still hear it with the hydrophone. That's how sensitive it is. Because the problem that I had with my research partners was like, everybody wants to talk. And I'm like, I'm recording, be quiet. Well, you can hear me? I'm like, I could hear everything. Like, just
yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was the straps on bimini top. And then I'm looking and I'm like, holy crap, like it's not that. And there was no boats around, there was nobody around. So it wasn't a boat motor. And it was so similar to what she had gotten, not quite the same, but it was similar. And I was just amazed. So I ended up getting another recording in 2018 when I was working for NBC, a show called First Look. And we were out, it was around 7:15. This is why it's so important with the field research, with the times, because from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. is a really good time because that's when the fish start feeding on the bugs. And that's what I believe these animals come up to the surface to feed. I think that's probably the only reason why they come up to the surface is to feed or to get the sun, the vitamin D to sustain as an ectotherm. So
There were 80 different variations of fish in that lake, I think, right?
yes, there is. Yeah. You know what's really funny about that? I'm an angler. I fished the lake I never fished off my boat. This is so stupid because like I have the research boat and I'm out there all the time and I don't fish when I'm on the boat. I shore fish. I go to the mouths of the creeks. I go down to the waterfall down here in Virgins. I go fishing. I catch some huge fish. But when I'm out on the boat, I'm so focused on Champ. I don't want to fish because it's like I want to focus on what I'm doing. It's like people are like, why aren't you fishing at the same time? And I'm like, I want to have my attention. It's like tunnel vision. I don't want that distraction of, listening for my reel to go screaming and then, trying to look at my sonar or listen with hydrophone at the same time.
Yeah. Well, see, I think when you were able to record the sounds, I think you do have the recordings of the sound of the creature, right?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So it's different from, first of all, what would a whale be doing in that lake, right? Mammals such as bats, they can echolocate.
Yes.
Orcas, I think, can echolocate too, can't they? Okay. So we're talking mammals here, but this is a reptile. Clearly, these are reptiles, and they're able to echolocate. That's impressive. Do you have the sound that we could hear right now by chance?
I do. Let me see. If I play it on a laptop, you probably be able to hear it?
Should be able to hear it, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I will play the first one, which was 2014.
Okay.
And that was captured at 7:45 p.m. July 31st. So I'll play it right now. So there's that one. Which I like to note on that, it sounds like purring, doesn't it?
It does.
What's really interesting is I went to, at the time, I was living in Rhode Island. I used to come up here every 2 weeks and drive, and it was such a pain. So finally, I managed to get things together and get a house up here. So now I'm on the lake, and I'm just like, thank God. But I still travel all over the place anyway by plane.
Sure.
So when I had gotten that, I said to myself, I think it's really important for me to go and do bioacoustics work out on the water and that sort of thing. So what I did, my first little venture was to Mystic Aquarium in Connecticut. And they have a beluga whale tank, and they have 2 belugas present there, Juno and Keela, and they've been there for quite some time. So I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get in this place and put my I can't put my hydrophone in the water. They're going to like, no, because it's like, do not drop foreign objects. And anything to do with like, if you don't have a scientific degree, they're not going to be like, okay, you could just like record them. They're going to look at you like you're a bozo. So I'm just like, okay, how am I going to figure this out? So I get there and I had my hydrophone, which is about the size of, a little bit bigger than a deck of cards. So it's quite small. And then it had the little cord with the microphone on the end. So I said, you know what? I think I can like kind of figure this out. So I had a little earbud set. I normally have the big headphones. So I went in the aquarium, sat down, and they have like a little area where it's like a cave. It's weird. And it's outside. I sat down, I had it in my purse, and I put the earbuds in. And I put the microphone up to the glass, and it worked great. And I'll tell you what, I recorded one sequence of this one whale in the tank doing this almost the same thing, the same purring type of frequency, same exact frequency, almost the same pattern, not quite the same, but very close. Now, here's the thing. I don't believe these animals are cetaceans, but I will say this. When this was the Champlain Sea 10 to 12,000 years ago, these animals were sharing it with the beluga whale. Beluga whale was discovered basically right down the street from my house in the 1800s. It was 1849, actually, and they found a beluga whale skeleton. And that was a confirmation that this whole area was once the Champlain Sea. So if they're sharing the area with the beluga whale, I believe these animals are so intelligent, they have the ability to mimic. Beluga whales can mimic very well. As being an ancient whale in this area, I'm not saying that Champ is a cetacean by any means, but I believe that going back at that time, being primordial, they have the same abilities to mimic. So I mean, the whales are out there and they might have been competing for food, who knows? But for some reason, they seem to have that sort of ability to echolocate. I mean, they might even have some mammal traits in there, but that, not modern day mammals. Because if they were modern day mammals, we would see them all the time. We would see them surfacing. They would be more social. They wouldn't be so elusive as they are today.
Fantastic stuff, Katy. It really is. I know I'm short on time. We could keep going longer, but I do have a few more questions for you. Let's try to see if we can squeeze it in.
Sure.
The Mansi photo from 1977. Do you know if they conducted a heat source in this photo? Has that been done?
I don't think that they did. I honestly don't. I know it went to the University of Arizona. They did all kinds of analysis to see if there's any type of superimpositions, any type of pulleys, all, you name it. I don't believe that was done. The only thing that's a great idea, the only thing is, as being an ectothermic type of animal, like with the thermal cam stuff, because I have a drone and I want to get the FLIR for the drone and go out in the marsh systems. And there's been times where people have seen them in the marsh, especially at nighttime. So to have the FLIR on there would be amazing, and just kind of buzz over, and who knows what you might see, but they may not necessarily show up as if they may show up as a different color, but you're going to see the variation between, say, the ground and them. So like if one of them's in the marsh or whatever, you're going to see like a temperature difference, I'm sure. But with the ectotherms, they basically suck in their surrounding temperatures. They may just blend in too. Because I did a lot of study with the infrared type of stuff with reptiles and amphibians, and some of them will show some heat. It depends on where they were before. They might have been in a warmer area and sucked in that heat, and then it might show. It just depends on the circumstance, I suppose.
Lastly, have you spoken to the indigenous tribes by chance in the surrounding areas to see what they know about this creature or these creatures?
It's funny you asked that. Well, it's now there's the Abenaki and Iroquois that called this animal Gittaskok or Tatoskok. So I've been friends with a lot of Native Americans throughout my years and stuff. I act like I'm old. I'm 37, but old enough, been through enough. But the local tribes, I have talking to some Mohawk. One of my friends, she's a Champlain witness, and she's Mohawk. And I didn't know she was Mohawk. I mean, I should have known because I met her on Facebook. And, you could just tell by her eyes that she's Mohawk. And she had a sighting up in Plattsburgh, New York in 1999. But the tribes around here, I really never got to talk to like an elder about some of the legends that have gone through the years. It's been kind of difficult to pinpoint down someone that's been around for a very long time. I like talking to the elders because they got so many stories, and it's been difficult actually. I've tried to do that because I'm coming out with a documentary. It's called Lady of the Lake: The Search for Champ, which I was gonna try to release it in April. But now that I have the new research vessel, which is 21 feet long, it's I only got to take it out a few times this past year because we had to fix this, we had to fix that. I painted the boat myself. It's a big boat. I almost got heat stroke like 3 times from painting it myself. And
is that too?
What's that?
Is that called the Kelpie too?
The Kelpie too, yes. Yeah. So I got the boat, and a lot of the summer this year, honestly, was shot because I had to like get all the repairs done, but that's okay because in the end, it's going to definitely pay off. So
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, especially if, for instance, I ever had a chance to come down to Vermont, I'd love to be able to see you work and see in action. going out on the lake and see how that goes and see if maybe we can spot something. So
Yeah,
that'd be a nice venture. I could charter a cruise, so
yeah,
to
you're,
speak.
you're definitely more than welcome to come up and stuff. I mean, I also have, like, as far as equipment wise, I have a ROV that goes down 325 feet down. So that's really interesting. I'll send you a little still shot, like a little picture of me holding it. I obtained that this year. The only problem is it's like, it's difficult to operate because you have to go through your iPhone.
Okay.
I don't really
Yeah.
like I don't really like it because, like, I want like an external joystick because it's like sometimes it doesn't respond. So I'm like, oh my God, what if I'm down like 300 feet and I actually have to physically pull the tether? You know, it's like, ah. So it's like with technology, you think that you've got it down and you think like having an ROV is going to be amazing, which it is, but not everything works all the time. So I'm trying to kind of get the little bugs out of it. Unfortunately, the software for it is kind of not the best. So we'll figure something out with that. But it goes 325 feet down. It's really cool. I mean, it's really fast because I took it out to try it out a few times. And it was just like, I'm like, where the hell did it go? It's like, I could kind of see it down the bottom and I'm trying to get it back up to the top. It's just with the research, it's such an expensive thing. I can't tell you how much I've spent. And that's the thing, like, people don't understand, like, they want to go out and do this and that. And they're like, I'm going to do all this research. And I'm like, if you only knew what you're getting yourself into. And not so much the Sasquatch, it's the water creatures that are the big time expense.
Oh, yes.
And maybe that's why there's like nobody else really doing anything. You know, it's like, whoa.
Well, I can tell you, I think we're out of time, but I really am grateful for you being here, to share what you've done, your research. Good for you. We need more people like you out there looking to find out what's going on. And someday, maybe we'll have a chance to actually view this creature in full sight, but hopefully to protect it as well, because we want these things to thrive. They're important, and there's something that captivates us. And it's kind of like one of those relics from the past that when you see it, you're hooked, you're changed, and that's all you want to study. I mean, it's a fascinating creature, and I wish you the very best in your research, and keep me posted. I always like to hear from everyone who's been on here and to see how they're doing, how they're progressing. And I look forward to seeing more of what you have. Thank you so much, Katy.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I know I could go longer. Maybe we can do this again sometime later in the year.
Yeah, let's do it. Definitely. No, I think you're on point. You know, I talk to a lot of people, and I like you a lot because, like, you got that skill. I could tell with the investigative stuff. A lot of people don't have that. They have like these really like simple questions, and oh, it's a plesiosaur, and they're not open-minded. And I see this all the time.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your honesty and everything you've had to share. For me, I've been involved in this field since the late 90s.
Yeah.
So a little over 20 years, but I just the last 3 years became an investigator, a PI. Most of the cases are either murder investigations, but when you mention cryptozoological, like, what the heck is that? I'm like, I'm about to tell you. Hold on to your shorts.
Yeah, we'll keep in touch. We'll talk on the phone because I really enjoyed our chat. I think it's going to be one of those things where we like talk for like 2 hours and we're like, where'd the time go? I got to get off the phone.
Absolutely. So you have a good day. I appreciate you.
You too.
God bless. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Everybody knows my stance when it comes to the young Earth. I'm a creationist. So I believe that 6,000 years ago, there was a massive flood, which every culture in this world depicts. When the waters receded, these creatures were left in this area. Whether or not they are Tanystropheus, which seems to be the right creature, it fits the description, it fits the only thing we know of so far. The long neck, the back, the long tail, the feet. Now, I'm not saying that it is a Tanystropheus. I truly believe it is, but it could very well be a long-necked turtle. It's just that she's right. We haven't found a shell. So if we would have found one by now, it probably would have floated to the surface or it would have been found on land, right? I don't know. The prehistoric, so to speak, turtle that comes to mind is the archelon. It's a big turtle. So is it possible that Champ is a long-necked turtle? Yeah, it's possible, no doubt. I wouldn't be surprised. It just doesn't fit. I had a lot more questions, but that's going to have to be for another time due to time constraints. There are a couple of other researchers out there, and there also are stories that were not mentioned. One particular was when Champ came on land. One lady saw it as it passed under the light. I think it might have been during the nighttime. And he probably came on land and stole a goat and went back to the marshes. Totally agree that these creatures are coming out of the lake and resting in the marshlands. Summer months, just like Lake Okanagan or Loch Ness, when the lake is calm, you have a better chance of seeing them. When there's no vessels in the area, they're going to emerge, just like she said. I do look forward to going to Lake Champlain. That could happen at the end of this summer. Meeting up with Katy, having a chance to get on the lake itself and do some great research. She's right, though. It is expensive, very expensive, when you're doing lake work. What do you think Champ is? Is it a living relic of the past? Or is it something else? Or maybe there's nothing there at all, just waves. That Sandra Mancy photo is amazing. Too bad she passed away. I would have loved to have a chance to have spoken with her. So that was the show for today, folks. Stay tuned. We have more to come. We have a pterosaur sighting in Arizona. We'll get to that. That's coming next. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you. But most importantly, seek the truth. And God bless every one of you on the other side of this screen. I'm your host, Jacob Guerra. We'll see you next time.